Great question. Well, the idea actually came about, believe it or not, 30 years ago.
Mm.
Um, I was in dental school. I was working as an orthodontic assistant, and I happened to notice that the brackets in the office were an 022 slot. And being a former engineering student, I just wondered, why were we not using 2125 wire in this 22 slot bracket system? And the orthodontist said, well, gosh, 2125 wire, that's a really heavy wire, and it would break brackets, and it would burn roots, and cause patients pain and everything else. And so it just like it was like, well, then why are we using an 022 slot bracket, right?
Mhm.
It just doesn't make any sense. I see that you're finishing in a 1925 wire. Well, why don't we just use a bracket that actually fits the wire that you like to use? And the answer was, well, it's just not available. Uh, it's never been made. And so if I had it, I'd use it, but they just don't make it. So I was kind of like, that's weird, you know. And so come to find out, well, the O2 system has been around for over 150 years, and they just keep making it because that's just the way it's always been. It's just sort of like
Wow.
tradition. Well, so the system is itself, the concept is very simple, right? And that is,
Mhm.
let's make a bracket slot that actually fits the wires that we like to use, right, during our finishing stages. So it's kind of like you get the best of all worlds, really. In the beginning, when you're leveling and aligning, we have a passive self-ligating bracket, and that allows some free-floating mechanics, low friction, arch development, unraveling of crowding, all the things that we like, for those who use passive self-ligating systems, all those things that you like about a passive self-ligating system. And along with that are consistency. And I'm all about systems in the office. And I've got 7 clinical assistants, and one's left-handed, one's right-handed. One likes to do the lig tie on the mesial, one on the distal, one goes to the occlusal, one goes to the gingival. And so there's all these inconsistencies that happen if you're using lig ties or steel ties to tie in brackets. Whereas in a passive self-ligating system, the door's either open or it's closed. It's open or shut. There's only 2 options there. And so as long as they can close the door, well, then that breeds consistency within your practice. And so, so I really like that about the PSL system. So the bracket is the bracket wire interaction is a passive in the beginning, the first couple of wires. But then, as you move into that full size wire, it actually becomes an active system, because you're actually engaging all 4 all 4 edges of the wire with the 4 walls of the interior walls of the bracket slot. And for the first time in history, we really have this really nice control during the finishing stages of our orthodontic treatment. And truthfully, that's when we're going to make up our efficiencies, is during those finishing stages, when we want that control, when we need that control to move that tooth just to the right spot. And that's when this bracket really shines. It's during finishing. So the Norris 2026 system has a number of very unique features. Number one, it has these very beefy tie wings. So you can put an elastic chain on it, you can put O-rings on it, you can put a steel tie or a Kobe hook or whatever you need to do. There's plenty of room there to put any kind of auxiliaries that you need. In addition, it's got probably the strongest bonding base out there in orthodontics. And you'll know that when you go to take these brackets off. I mean, you literally have to have this patient bite on a cotton roll and stabilize the tooth. And we have a little trick on our website on how to do that, and how to do that for permanent removal, and how to do that for repositioning. And so in addition to that, the hooks on the wire are mimed into the bracket, so that there's no drop-in hooks, there's no hooks getting loose or broken or anything like that. And the hooks are put on in a very thoughtful way, big enough to be useful, but yet small enough to be comfortable. And so with that said, our premolars are fairly unique in that the premolar hook is in the middle of the tooth, and that makes the premolar bracket universal. A premolar bracket can be used for the first or second premolar on the left or right side. And so we have one premolar bracket for the maxillary teeth and one premolar bracket for the mandibular teeth. And so that helps to reduce inventory. Similarly, the cuspids are also universal. So the upper left fits the lower right, and the upper right fits the lower left, and so forth. So there's just a lot of really kind of neat features that allow this bracket to just be what I think is the best thing out on the market. Another cool feature is the door itself actually has like a self-opening and self-closing mechanism. So if you're closing the door and you get it more than 50% of the way closed, it actually has an internal spring that helps close the door the rest of the way. It's almost like a sliding kitchen drawer that helps, the self-closing drawers in some high-end kitchen appliances. And similarly, if you're opening the door, once you get it past halfway, this internal spring mechanism helps you to open it the rest of the way. And I know that's one of the frustrations with some clinical assistants is that they got to open the door and then it's not quite open and they have to go back and reopen the door. And so that's one of the issues that we set out to solve in this latest version of the bracket. The wires themselves are an arch form that is a little unique. They are extra broad, and some clinicians first see that and they go, "Whoa, I don't want that kind of arch form in my patient." But think about it, almost like a reverse curve wire, right? We put reverse curve wires in our patients all the time when they have a deep bite. Why is that? Well, because we want the bite to go in that general direction. Now, we don't fully expect our curve of speed to be actually reversed, right? We just want that to be sort of flattened out. And so in a way, it's almost like building in a little overcorrection into a reverse curve wire. Well, the same thing is true for this extra broad arch form, okay? We don't necessarily want all of our arches to be that broad, but we just sort of want them to move them in that general direction. We've actually tested the amount of force, the transverse force that these wires are exerting on our arch form. And there's, the NiTi wires are exerting somewhere around 5 to 7 grams, and and even the beta titanium wires are somewhere in the 7 to 10 gram of transverse or lateral development forces. So it's very, very light, very biologic, and the fact that they have this rounded rectangular shape, it just makes them fit really well with the bracket system because of that door mechanism that we talked about earlier, and helps them seat better and reduces friction, and just a lot of really cool features. Well, and it's a great question, and honestly, I took it a little further than just what I've noticed. I actually did a little research project in my office. What we did was, I was an 022 passive self-ligating bracket user for 20 years, and starting in January 2017, I went exclusively to an 020 by 026 system. So what we did was we took our last 500 cases that we had finished using the previous 022 system, and we actually compared the clinical efficiency of that to our 500 cases in the 020 system. I had already developed this broader arch wire for the wires, or broader arch form for the wires, and so and the wire sequence really didn't change. I mean, I was still using the same, 014, 1818, 1925 sequence. So really the only thing that changed was just simply the bracket slot. So therefore, I think it was a really good study. And I didn't count the appointments. I had 2 of my staff members count the appointments, and basically compared those 2 groups. And the 2 groups were actually matched by classification. They were matched by age. They were matched by level of difficulty of the case, interdisciplinary, adult, all this kind of stuff. And so it was a very, very, there was a lot of integrity to the data, let me just say that. And what came out of that study is that we had 26% fewer appointments with the 020 system than with the 022 system. Okay, so on average, we saved 5 appointments for every patient. And I think that's pretty significant. It's very significant if you consider one's profitability in the practice. Right. That's actually one of the best parts, because a couple of my staff members actually, work like on the weekends at another office, and and they just kind of laugh when they come to work on Mondays. It's like, oh my gosh, it's so much better working here. Not only is this bracket easier to use, just the results that we get, the efficiency of it, it's so much better working with this bracket system than with like a twin bracket system, or quite frankly, any other passive self-ligating bracket system. and I've had a number of assistants work with different systems throughout the year. And actually, I've tinkered with and tried a number of different systems over the years, and I just based on that experience, was able to kind of like take the best of all worlds and put it into this bracket system and design something that is easy to open, easy to close, and one of the unique features is the leading edge of the door is actually rounded. So that rounded edge actually pushes on the rounded edge of the wire to help seat that wire. Because when you're dealing with a 1925 wire in a 2026 slot, I mean, the tolerances are very small. It's a very tight fit. And so having that leading edge of the door work almost like a little cam to sort of cam or push that wire in and fully seat it as the door is being closed. It's a fantastic feature of the bracket. Well, we've started with a number of basically, webinars and videos and tips and tricks and techniques and things like that. In addition to that, we're also offering a series of in-office courses. The first one is going to be here in San Antonio, October 2nd and 3rd, which is coming up in less than a month. And for those concerned about the COVID situation, we've certainly taken all those measures into consideration, and we are creating a very safe environment that's going to be very small in scale and very well controlled. My wife is a physician, and so she's going to be assisting with some of the safety features, making sure that everybody here is safe. And so we want not only everyone attending, but everyone presenting to be safe and just be smart about it. But it's going to be a fantastic weekend of learning and friendship and some great food and some great fun stuff here in San Antonio. Actually, we have a private event at a local jazz club one night, and then we have a sunset dinner cruise set at one of the local lakes. So in addition to some fantastic learning, not only about the bracket system and mechanics and clinical efficiencies and things like that, but we're going to also just delve into everything from how do we develop a winning team, how do we hire people, how do we motivate people, how do you inspire people, how do you market yourself, how do you differentiate yourself within your competition, what are the specifics of a new patient phone call that makes that memorable. And some of this is kind of based on there's basically 5 touch points that we have, or opportunities that we have to communicate with a patient, and those are like the pre-touch, and that is basically your marketing efforts or your reputation within the community. What do they know about you before they even come into contact to your office? Then you have your first touch, and that is your new patient phone call or the new patient experience. Okay. Then what's called the core touch, and that is how do they feel at each of their appointments when they're being treated and they're coming to your office. Do they feel like they're valued? They feel like they're being listened to? Are their needs being met, and so forth. Then you have what's called a final touch, and it's like, was it a celebration when they finished? What kind of memorable impression did you leave when they got finished their treatment? And then afterwards, it's just the post touch, and that is how do we keep in touch with our patients and keep ourselves in their top of mind, TOMA, so that when someone asks about an orthodontist, they just don't even hesitate and they use your name. And so keeping them engaged with some of our community karma events and community social events and through our web presence and social media presence. And so those are the 5 things that we're going to be going over in addition to all the things that we talked about.
Yeah.